there on Facebook, it's instant. Meanwhile, we got Alphabet over here trying to confuse us by changing their name. I still know you run Google. Like,
he knows, people. He knows.
You're YouTube. Man. I know we're doing small talk. We're totally getting you, but you're YouTube back when it started, 07, 06, and it was just a simple video player, and people would upload, basically what TikTok is now. People just upload like stupid stuff, and you'd be like, you would watch it, you would fall down that rabbit hole. Now everything's produced, everything's great, which is just good because it's been like a thing of democracy of video making. Even right here, perfect example. Right? Anybody can do it. It takes a little pizzazz, as we got here. And then that thing gets shot out to Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want to go.
Exactly, man. Woo. All right, John, start us off, dog. Start us off. It'll be kicking in.
It'll be kicking in? All right. All right. Well, you guys, I don't have any room. I'm going to do it on my lap. I'll do it on my armrest. Okay. Hey everyone, it's a comic book look here, proudly sponsored by Rainbow Comics, the awesomest partnership in the galaxy. Believe that. Midwest strong, 605 strong. It's your boy John on Demand, looking so Wednesday-tacular. I had a couple of calls today at work where I told clients, they're like, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. It's Wednesday. It's the Nerd Sabbath. And people are like, and these are like doctors and stuff, and they're like, that's amazing. So it's a lot of fun. Joined by co-host CEO Tom Devine. There can only be one with this pink lightning bolt shirt, loud and proud. I love it. And special guest, speaking of awesome t-shirts and amazing human beings in the 605, we got Marvin joining us from Wednesday Comics, which, P.S., completes the Triforce of Wednesday Comics on our show.
It does indeed. I forget what the pieces all represent, but if whatever one's the most powerful, that's the one I am. So.
But no, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are looking forward to talking some books with you, learning more about you, and just geeking out. It's Wednesday, baby. So I will let you guys steer it. I got a couple more shures to do super quick to get the word out. And Tom, I will let you have the helm.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Kicking it over to me. John's going to do the sharing. He gets it all out to the community. Maybe we'll have comments. Who knows? But before we get into that, let's have many people may know you, Marvin. They have met Garrett. They met Alex. And like John said, you're that Triforce of power with Wednesday Comics. I'm repping today. And so tell us, how did you get your start in comics, Marvin? How did you start reading comics? And then how did you transition that into wanting to talk about it on a weekly podcast, which you've very rarely have missed one. I guess recently you just missed one because you were sick, but you almost never miss for years, where unlike me and John, we take whole years off. So it's a little different. So yeah, tell me about your origin story, how you started reading comics and how Wednesday Comics got its start.
So the first dabble, I'll say, which is actually kind of ironic because you have Rainbow Comics and Cards and Collectibles up here. I remember going there with my dad back when they were in the old location in front of what used to be Kmart, I believe, and going in there and purchasing some comics. When you roll in as a kid, you don't understand that whole process. So I had 300 for some reason, because it was shiny, it has a shiny foil cover. So I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And I have some random not Dynamite, Valiant books, old school X-O Man of War. And then I also got these trading cards, which are Marvel versus DC trading cards, because that's when that was happening. And I grew up with the very few things comic related. And then when you become an adult and you have adult money, then you're like, hey, let me start. Or actually, not even adult, when you first start your first job, then you kind of start, hey, let me actually start buying these comics. And so I always say on our show, it is I keep forgetting how hard it is to jump into get into comic books. It feels like a very scary kind of place because there's so much. And so a lot of people, they start this way, and I started this way. It's you get the graphic novels, right? You get the things that people talk about. Watchmen. I think I got Watchmen, Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, and a fourth one. I can't remember what the fourth one is, but I got these, and still though I bought them, and then it sat on my shelf for a while because I don't know,
Why did you? Why did you pick those? Why did you pick those books, Marvin? They are the best books. Did you just look at like the best comics and?
Yeah, you look at a list. What's the best comics to buy? Those are like the top 3 that are on there every single time. Every list has those 3. So I picked them up, and I remember I bought them, and they sat there for a while because I every once in a while have an issue, and I'm not saying that you guys do, but if I look behind you, possibly. That you buy stuff and they sit there for a little bit before you get to it, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was super into movies back then, so I had tons of like DVDs, even VHS tapes back then still. Like I would get like boxes of them that people were trying to give away at garage sales. So I got it, like I bought the comics, and then I got really into movies, and so the comics sat there. Then eventually I go and I pick them out, and I think the first one I read, here's what happened. No, I moved. And when I moved next door in the strip mall, there was a bookstore. And I went in there one day, killing time, and they had a comic book section. So I go, hey, let me buy one of these books. And Civil War was in there. And I bought that. That's what I read first. And I remember reading it. And as this kid who watched all the cartoons, right? Mm-hmm. Back when we were young. And that was on TV. That's what really kind of like gets you into superheroes, or at least did us. And so I'm familiar with these characters. So that's the first one I read, right? And I read it, and I remember like halfway through it, like there's a pretty brutal scene in the sewers in that book. And I remember like at that point thinking, I didn't realize that the comics would be like you can't show this on TV, right? Yes. And so I'm used to the animation, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is way different than what I'm used to. So put that down. Then I read Watchmen. Then I read Dark Knight Returns. And then I read Batman Year One, in which, if you know anything about those 3 books, kind of follows that same content timeline, where it's like it's violence, it's more mature, it's something that is more for adults. And so like that really got me into it. And so I remember at the time, and like I said, when you want to get into comics, it's kind of hard, like, right? And I think back then, like I was trying to look for stuff like this show, or even our podcast, like things like that. And back then it was kind of scarce when I started reading comics. Like 2007 is when I started getting into them, really getting into like the weekly stuff. Yeah. And so I first started buying them online, and they would get shipped to me. And by that time I like bought everything, right? You don't know what you're doing. So you're like, okay, I'll just buy this, this, and this, and this. Plus what I said before, you got adult money now. And so
$3? Sure, I'll do this.
You got adult money. It's pre-kids, pre-marriage. So like you act like you're a millionaire. And getting all these comics coming in, and that's when I really started getting into it. How the show starts is that me and Alex work together. Dude loves superheroes. TMNT, obviously, if you've heard the show, the guy can't stop talking about him. And so I would talk about all this stuff, and I've talked about the comics I'm reading, but dude's never picked up a comic. And if you know Alex, he's not a guy who jumps in number 300. He's got to get one. He's got to start at the beginning. The guy can't just like, he can't even drop a book. And if he knows it's ending in 10 issues, doesn't matter. He'll pick them up. He hates the book. He'll pick them up because he's got to have the whole thing.
That's dedication, man.
Meanwhile, so by the way, Amazing Spider-Man, when they were going through that Superior run, it was kind of towards the end of that. Mm-hmm. I was getting Spider-Man at the time, and there was one more issue of that arc, and I dropped it. I didn't even like want to give it one more issue. So like I'm the opposite. I'll drop it anytime, but I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up.
And you'll pick it up at any time. You're constantly picking shit up on like the last issue of an arc. I love it. I'm the same way. I don't care. Every issue is, isn't it like Stan Lee says, every issue is some kid's first comic. So it's like, nah, dude, I'll read. Yeah, start at issue 19 of Ice Cream Man. I literally just started picking it up on the last issue. I was like, fuck it, I'll get it. I heard this is awesome.
I feel like you'll get it. Like if you read one of those comics, and that's what I kind of try to say in the show, being like, if you're new to comics, and I'll say to anybody watching this that's not into comics, but it's like into that material or those characters or anything like that, it's like it looks like it's intimidating, X-Men 300, but guess what? Nobody expects you to read 299 comics to catch up with what's going on. You'll get it within like 2 issues. You'll want to. That's different than you have to. So
no, John really has to. He feels he has to get all the X-Men books.
No.
Well, that's exactly like Alex. So I would talk to this guy and he'd be like, hey, you should get comics, but he wouldn't make the investment because there was no jumping on points for this guy.
Yeah.
So I started giving him my comics to read and borrow. And eventually the dude has like a 2 boxes full of them. And at some point I remember being like, hey, I just need these ones back, but the rest of them you can just keep. And once he knew that he owned comics and they were like issue like 60, 70, whatever they were, he knew he had to get issues around them. And then he started buying comics. So
nice.
Kind of tricked him to start. So I think Detective, I gave him some Detective comics, and he still to this day is like collecting the in-between season half because I would give him like issue like 700, 650, 647, so he's getting them all between. And then Amazing Spider-Man at the time had the Brain Trust with Mark Wade and Joe Kelly.
Coming out weekly.
It was coming out weekly, so like I had tons of those, and some of the arcs were good, some not so good, and so I would give them the ones that are not so good. They say, "Hey," I would let them borrow the other ones. Say, "You can keep those. So I don't ever want to see those again." And then we met Garrett and his brother, hashtag #GuestHost1, because they started working the same store we did. Right?
Okay.
And believe me, the first time I met one of them, and then like only one of them was working the first time I met him. And the next time I come back and it's the other one, but I didn't know they were twins. I didn't know we twins started working at that store. So I had the thing where I'm like talking to this guy and I'd be like, this guy doesn't remember anything.
What a space mate. Gosh.
But I remember the first time I talked to Garrett, because Alex said, hey, I think they get comics. I saw them at Rainbow. Like I was going into Rainbow and I was leaving Rainbow and they were coming into Rainbow. So I said, well, really, those guys? Because I don't know. He was on the show. And I was accurate. They look like football guys. They look like guys who would play football. They did play football. They're both linebackers. And so they're really, at the time, and then Corey still is now, like, Garrett is too, really into physical fitness. And so, I don't know. Back then, my dumb head is like, hey, this guy's not going to need the comics. And so,
he's a jock like John Runyon. It's not going to.
Oh, yeah, right.
It's a classic, four-sport athlete here. Yeah.
So Alex goes, hey, I think I saw them. I go, you sure? And he goes, yeah, okay. So I go back to where Garrett's working. And I just say to him, I go, hey, I said, you like Grant Morrison? And he goes, yeah. Like I wanted a question where I knew he had read comics. It wasn't just a guy who likes superheroes. So Grant Morrison, I feel like is that person, because if you don't read comics, you don't know Grant Morrison. And if you read comics, though, you know that name at least. So I said, hey, you know Grant Morrison? He said, yeah, Also Superman is one of my favorite books. And I said, okay, this guy's my friend. And we talked Frank Whiteley art for him. We talked about that book for a long time. Turns out he doesn't like it as much as I do. So years later, I would be like, hey, our friendship was started on a lie. But that's how we got into it. And then I started talking to Corey. He likes Spider-Man. So we talked about at that time was a good run to Spider-Man. So we talked about that. And so that's why we all four started hanging out and reading comics. And at the time, they were doing that New 52 thing. DC was, like 5 times ago when they tried to restart. And we all really got hyped about that because it was a time when Alex felt like he could get more books because stuff was restarting. He didn't have to know anything. They were wiping that clean.
Perfect.
Corey, who at the time was like, when I met them, Garrett only got DC. He didn't get anything else. Like no Image, no Marvel. And Corey only got Marvel and nothing else. That's how they split it off. Like they read each other's comics, but they really didn't. And from hanging out for me, from a guy who doesn't care, I'll just read whatever. That's kind of how I was like, hey, you should read this book, yada, yada. So that was a time when we all could like start on books together and like be on the same books. So we really got into it then. And then just over time, like every Wednesday, we would always ask for it off at the place that we worked. And we would go into the shop together, get the books, go have lunch or something like that. And then always just like chill and talk about these comic books. And I remember actually, and I've said this, I think I've said this before on our show, but since we're here now at a comic book look, I'll say it here too. I remember at one point, John actually said to me, he was like, you guys are really knowledgeable about comics. Like, why don't you guys like do a show or something like that? And I know at the time you guys were doing a comic book look, so that had started. And I used to I watched that all the time. I was on the infamous John's birthday episode. Like I've been on. And so like, I was always like that guy who like was watching you guys being like that looks fun. I should do that. But I didn't really think like, who the hell is going to listen to this thing? But John saying that was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try it out. And so for a long time, and I've said this on the show too, for a long time I was also like, researching what to get for a podcast, and you kind of think you have to get all this high end stuff. And so like the dream of starting something like that is just like way out there. Right. And you're like, okay, I got to get this amount of money to start and do all this. And then I remember, in 2016 is when the show started. It started in May of 2016. Like it's when we first started talking about the idea of getting the equipment. And I think the first episode comes out end of June, July, something like that. Alex knows. I don't know. That guy's got a steel trap. And but it happened because my first son was born. And at the time, he was born premature. So he was in the hospital. We were in the hospital for a long time. And comics were kind of a thing that I did every week. But I remember thinking at the time, because I always had it as a big thing out there, being like, oh, you got to do all this high-end stuff. That was like the first thing that kicked me in the ass and was like, why don't you just do it? Like, who gives a shit? Like, it could sound as long as it doesn't make your ears bleed, right? If you get a decent enough mic that doesn't make your ears bleed and you're entertaining enough, maybe someone will listen. So we just started. Like, we bought the cheapest stuff we could that we could afford. Still have those mics. Mics aren't bad,
It sounds great. I mean, pre-COVID, now you guys are remote. It doesn't sound as good. But pre-COVID, you guys sound just as good. I listen to tons of podcasts. You guys were just on the level of all the other ones. I mean, unless it was like in WSC podcast or something.
That's another thing too. Is like sometimes you listen to podcasts, I'm like, it's got to sound better than this. Like some people out there just don't care. That's why I was like, yeah, okay, let's start. So we started doing it, and there were rules when we first started. I was like, I don't want to kind of like do this and like give up on this in 2 months. So like, if we're going to do this, Garrett and Alex, like I want at least you guys to be like, we're doing this, right? We're going to do this every week. Not that I don't think you guys have lives. I go, we'll make it work. Like we'll do a different day, stuff like that. But I want to know whether or not we're committed before we buy all this stuff. And Corey actually was supposed to be part of the show originally, and he's only guest host now, but he couldn't make the commitment. So that's why he's not part of the show. Which makes sense at this point. Now he doesn't even live in the same state as us, but
it was a good call.
Yeah, and he knew, which I appreciate. He was like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to do it every week. And he also didn't read comics as frequently as the rest of us. Like he took forever to read his one comic that he got. And so we were just like, okay, it's fine. We'll bring you on. Like, that's fine. And that's why he's the most frequent guest host, because he was supposed to be part of the original crew. So the three of us started, and two things really. We never missed because of that thing. I was like, hey, I don't want to miss. Like, if we're going to be gone, let's pre-record an episode and let's do that. The only reason during that, what you mentioned recently, we recently missed one here last month for the first time in 5 years.
Wow.
Because I got strep throat so bad I couldn't even speak. Oh. And it was so unexpected. Like, literally, this is what happened. Literally, I talked about on the show. I took a nap, noon hour, right? My noon hour. I'm working at home, take a little nap, wake up, and have strep throat. I don't know how it happens. I'm not even kidding. Like, I couldn't, like, my all of a sudden hurts. Like, I was like, what's going on here? It's sick. Before that, fine. I mean, it was obviously I didn't just get it from sleeping. It was in here, but it decided to activate after I fell asleep. And so it was that sudden. That was a Wednesday. Not a Wednesday, a Monday. So we usually record Monday nights. And so I was like, hey, guys, I don't think I can do it today. Let's try it tomorrow. And so it was Tuesday. I was like, dude, there's no way I can do it today either because it's getting worse. And then Wednesday. And then Thursday, I go, hey, we're going to have to skip this week because, like, this isn't getting any better. I got to go to the doctor. This is not just a sore throat. You don't have a sore throat for 4 days. Like, I can, like, barely swallow food or anything like that. I got to go in and I had strep throat. The works.
Brutal.
And so, like, I found an old episode that was, like, more – we do game show episodes every once in a while that's not really comic-based. And I was like, yeah, let me throw those out there because it wasn't – like, a lot of the stuff we talk about week to week, obviously we talk about the books coming out that week or we talk about review stuff. It's really, like, time-sensitive and it's for that time. But shows like that we do, so those are evergreen, so I'll just throw that out there. So that's why we did that. And the second thing I said was, one, I said, if we're going to do the show, we need a commitment. Like, if you're going to do it, we're going to do it. And then two, I was like, I never want to feel like this is a job. Mm-hmm. I want to feel like we're meeting every week and we're having fun with it. The moment we stop having fun with it, we need to decide how we change it up to do it differently. Because if you listen to the first few episodes, or like the first year of our show, we have changed it 3 times at least.
Oh yeah,
and that's to keep it fresh. Like if you know anybody knows me, and this would be no surprise by how many books I drop and pick up, whatever. I get bored easily. Like I'm not like if I do a show the same way for a whole year, then I'm like, God, let's do something. Like I want to do something different here. So like eventually became we did special episodes like Back Matter where we don't talk about comics. Like I still wanted to talk to them, and we talked about like scary stories, and we talked another one. We talked about holidays, Christmas, just to throw different flavors in and kind of get it going. But I feel like at this point, and you know what, this is great about this show here at Comic Book Look is that, and John says it all the time, like this area. I don't know, maybe I don't know. Other areas must have some sort of groupings of comic book fans too, but this area is like has this kind of community that not only do we all try to like love these things and love to talk to a lot of people, but very welcoming in terms of also making content to bring people in. You guys with this show, you got Sarge over there every once in a while yelling at me on YouTube, and then our podcast, and there's other podcasts, and there's even people that we know in our grouping that like are trying to get into comics and making comics. That you have one right behind you there, Tom, and it's surprising to me that like if you asked anybody in the U.S. being like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, like what do you think about it? Like this is not it, and yet we're trying to make it not what they think about it, and this is what they're going to think about with this show right here. So I'm glad to be part of this whole community here, and I think anybody that's part of it will speak for the same way. And that's just like one of the benefits of starting that show. Like I said, you guys had started your show, and I was like, it inspired me to be like, hey, you can go out there and put out content, and then John's just like it. But then again, I still was like, who cares? It's just going to be some guy who reads comics. But then John was like, hey, you guys know like these writers, artists, like you literally we'll throw out a name and remember this person who wrote this thing. And I was like, well, we come from like the three of us. And I think Tom, you said this when Alk was on. The three of us are way different in that show, what we enjoy and like how we come look about those books. And sometimes we argue about it. Sometimes we agree on a book. When we agree on a book, if it's good or bad, usually those conversations, depending on how bad it is, but those are very passionate conversations. And then when we all disagree on something, I'm always here being like, how did you like that book? I don't understand. But the good thing is, I don't really like, I'll make fun of Alex, but I know he likes different things. The guy likes TMNT. That's fine. I enjoy them too. I don't enjoy them as much as he does. Garrett enjoys Superman so much so that I don't understand why he gets everything that comes out of Superman, and even stuff he like literally hates reading, and he has to read it. It's like a disease. And
he hasn't even talked. I mean, it's been like years since he enjoyed action for Superman. Like, I don't even remember the last time he was like, oh, so stoked for action. I was so stoked for Superman. But he talks about them every single week about them being mediocre.
That's the thing. It's not been good for a while. They brought on Bendis to be like, hey, let's make it better. And then he hates that too. And it's like, hey, is there nothing they can do to fix this? This character or these books? I feel like that character's great. Like, don't get me wrong. Also, Superman is like my favorite book, but that as a weekly series, they cannot figure it out.
No,
or monthly series.
Heck yeah, man.
So, anyways, that's the whole story.
Love it.
We got
such a good story.
We got some comments coming in here as well for some viewers. James, good evening. Jency says, good evening to you, sir. Happy Comic Book Sabbath, aka Wednesday. Thank you so much for checking in. And of course, Matt from YouTube. The dynamic duo is a triforce of comic wisdom tonight. Preach! We are bringing the greatness tonight. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun show. We're excited to have Marvin on here with us. Well, perfect. I was going to try to save this for Sarge, because sometimes Sarge has a tendency of lurking in the shadows of the show, but he's not here yet. I know he's not because he hasn't said anything yet. So I got to settle this, Marvin. All right.
Yep.
So once upon a time, in addition to co-host one, or guest host one, you had another element to the show. And I don't believe that this has been appearing in your show recently. And Sarge gave this to me for Christmas a few years ago, saying he stole it from your set. And I just wanted to settle the beef and own that I still have it.
Oh, right.
So if you're missing the bell, that's where it is.
Still, the bell has been missing. I know for a while we were getting ransom voicemails. So it is still missing. I now see where it is, and appears on camera, not like any other hostage video, to be some sort of ransom for it. So
I was thinking about that tonight. Like, I got to get that on there because it's been just sitting there, and I'm like, that's amazing.
You know what's funny about that is that Sarge is like, if you think about it like this, think about like all of us being part of this kind of network of shows. Sarge is the guy who pops up like in every show, so you know these are all connected, right?
Yeah. I'm bringing in the hot take right there, John, because that's what we're bringing it. Sarge is the #1 comic book trickster in all of Sioux Falls. Is he not? Like, sometimes I'm watching something on YouTube, and then Sarge is watching too, and then he'll comment, and then they'll talk, be like, "Oh yeah, Sarge," and then his shit on Twitter is so funny. He is consistently throwing shit on its head. He's the #1 trickster in all of Sioux Falls when it comes to the comic book community. Sarge, we love you. Boom!
I voiced the same thing. The guy shows up on everything. Like, I'll be watching something on YouTube, like, "Oh, that's cool. Hey, today we got a guest Sergeant American." Like, "Oh, he's on there too." And then what you said exactly. Twitter. The man knows how to do Twitter. Like, I constantly am favoring his tweets because it literally makes me laugh out loud. I don't think there's anybody on Twitter that makes me laugh out loud as much as Sarge, especially when he tags us in something. It's like, "Hey, this is like," it makes a joke in my expense, and which I'll take. It just makes me laugh, especially like that thing he just tweeted to us yesterday, 2 days ago, whatever it was. Spiderman Into the Dark, that Broadway play. Yeah. He posted the Green Goblin video. I watched that.
That was so great.
First off, I would see that show. First off. So second off,
costumes are great.
Second off, when he's like, "Hey, I bet you guys like know the words to this." When I watched it, I was like, I probably would find that on Spotify and play that song. So it wasn't horrible. In context of it being Spider-Man, yeah, maybe not. Yeah. But in terms of like just doing its own thing,
very interesting.
Which actually I was going to ask, because John has a little bit more Marvel knowledge than I do. Mm-hmm. And Tom too. The character at the end of that song, the silver, like the slice lady, the knives and stuff, is that real?
No, that's made up for the. That was a made up character for the play.
Oh, okay. Because like all the rest of them, obviously, are like from Sinister Six, and then you got this random, kitchen knife over here. And I don't know whether or not it was real or not. I was like, I've never seen that.
Not. There's like 4 other like extremely weird characters in that play that are completely made up for the play. I think the person who wrote Lion King, the musical for Broadway, also wrote that Spider-Man Into the Dark or whatever it's called, or what, I can't remember.
I think that's what it's called. I'm not sure.
And it is, yeah. I mean, it was panned so hard when it first came out. I would have loved to see it. Oh my!
You know who that character looks like though? She looks like the C-3PO ripoff in Spaceballs.
Yes,
except exactly. All silver. That's why it confused me. I was like, I've seen her somewhere before. It's it's Spaceballs. Never mind.
The character's name is Swiss Miss, evidently.
Yeah, that's what it is. Swiss Miss. That's the thing about Marvel, though. That's the thing about Marvel, though. Could have been real, could have been fake. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool, man. Well, let's get into these books, guys. It's Wednesday. We got new comics. Me and John went to Rainbow. Marvin's a digital loser. So let's talk about what books we are going to read. And I'll start it off today, John, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I don't mind. I hate that question.
I want to talk about 2 books because I missed one of them. But it's the comic book history of animation. So we have issue 2 and issue 3. I talked about it when the first one came out. I was absolutely blown away by this book. This is a non-fiction comic book, truly about the start of animation. So in this one, we get the story of Walt Disney, who he fucked over the years, how he got its start, how Felix the Cat was, he was trying to rip him off, how Porky the Pig started, how Looney Tunes started, how everybody's just copying everybody and ripping everybody off. And these people start separating and they're all jumping houses. but it's so cool to learn like this, the 1920s and 1930s, the birth of animation, talking about the first time sound was brought in with animation, the race to get sound to move along with the animation. What a breakthrough it was when they had like this thing on the ball on the screen that jumps to the words and like the sing-alongs, and how that changed cinemas, where people would just go to the movie theaters to sing along to popular songs while they were shown on screen. All sorts of really cool stuff, but it's completely nonfiction. It's all true. Fred Van Lente, we all know him from, you know, writing regular comics, but it is done in a way where like Mickey or Walt Disney is always like has mouse ears, and the person who draws Goofy looks like Goofy, and like here's Betty Boop, and in this one they're talking about how horrible Betty Boop comics were, if like a Me Too nightmare where the entire comic was just about her trying to not be molested by the people around her. But it was just, it's such a good book, dude. 6 out of 6 beers. This is on the same level like History of Hip Hop or Mouse, or those nonfiction true stories that are done in comics. And I mean, this one's done at such a high level that I absolutely loved it. So I read both of these today, and I thought they were amazing. 6 out of 6 beers, both of them.
Is there any indication as to how many issues that's going for?
I don't know if it says.
Okay.
Let me check. I'm not sure.
That was just
I don't know. My guess, it could probably go like 7 or 8 would be my guess. But I don't know. It's really good. I love nonfiction comics. It proves that comic books can be anything. Yeah. We read comics mostly because they're tied to characters or these different things. But I mean, I don't. I read comics for the gold that's in between. It's a storytelling medium, and I get to see some really, really cool. This is a really, really interesting way to see the story of the birth of animation.
Right on.
All right.
For me, I did get one book read before the show, and of course, it was a priority read for me. I wouldn't say it's necessarily straight a 6 out of 6 beer rating, but we'll give it a shot here. Thunderbolts issue 2, King in Black. So you guys know I love my Thunderbolts, and I had to go with the star cover. It just makes me so happy. This book overall is completely pointless. I think that all these tie-ins to King in Black are a big waste of money. However, it has the Thunderbolts stupid logo on it, and I love my Thunderbolts, and I love some of these characters in there. So there's some I don't know, like Mr. Fear and Beltrock, but Star was that recent villain 4 to 5 issue run that came out. She was had like her heart ripped out by Captain Marvel, and now she has like an Infinity Stone in her. So that's a recent character that's in here, and then Taskmaster as well is in there. So that's kind of cool too. And Kingpin is running the show, and they even put a silhouette in the O.
Nice.
And I think that's really badass. And so it's another quirky group of villains trying to do good things, kind of. And the dialogue makes it so worth it. So this, to me, is a total, like, oh, this makes my heart warm. It's so great. It just, the whole King of Black tie-in to me is super pointless. But I wish it would just be an ongoing series. I think that would make me really happy. But I'd give it a 5 out of 6 beers, only because I got the other one right here. So
is it just going to end after King of Black? Oh, that's
it's like a limited run, and I'm just like, all right, that's all right. So all right, Marvin, what do you got?
Since you mentioned that, I will mention Daredevil number 27.
Nice.
Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto. It's the same thing as John was saying. That's why I brought it right afterwards. King of Black tie-in. Totally unnecessary. The last issue was the first one. This one's the last one. It's like a 2-issue tie-in thing. It like the story, the actual story of Daredevil has been great, fantastic since Chip took over. And issue 25 was like really good. And then all of a sudden, like it feels like they have to divert so much to make any sense with King of Black that it does. Is the last 2 issues haven't been that great, or this issue. Excuse me, the last issue. But I don't know. It's only 2 issues, so I'll suffer through the King in Black stuff. It's really dumb, but I will. Like, any of you guys have read 26, like, literally, Daredevil gets infected by the symbiote, and guess what? I guess he's got horns because he's Daredevil. Like, how would the symbiote know that? So it's like that, and then Elektra is Daredevil right now, because Daredevil's in jail, or Matt Murdock is. Which is here's the thing. Here's the thing I love about comic books, and I said this on the show, and I'll say it again. It's so fucking dumb. But in the Daredevil comic book, he's in jail. He's in jail because he killed somebody, and they prosecuted him. They said, "Hey, you're going to jail." They said, "Hey, because you have a secret identity, we're going to keep the mask on you in jail, right? All right, and then, but we're not going to let you wear the Daredevil mask. We're going to get you an orange mask that looks the same, that looks like your pullover as a jailmate, and you'll wear that." And it's like, okay, so they literally have to be like, I don't know who, like, if you think logistics of this, if I pull an Alex, right, they have to be like, hey, somebody's going to go make this mask out of that same material. You can't wear your other mask, and plus, we're accommodating you wearing a mask for some reason, because Daredevil killed the person and Matt Murdock did not, and so like they didn't even know it's Matt. So like this would never happen in the real world. They would never be like, hey, you were undercover, like you had a mask on, you robbed the place. You know what? Wear the mask inside too. We don't want to damage that character, whoever you are underneath it. Which is funny because now I feel like Chip knows it's dumb, because the last issue he had a character say that to Matt, was like, he's like, "You're not going to serve your full time." Matt's like, "No, I'm going to serve the time that I need to be here." And he's like, "Dude, they're letting you wear your mask still. Like, you think you're going to be here your full time?" Like he's saying you're getting, special treatment right now. So that's where we are with that. It's fantastic though, at least until the last issue when the King of X stuff started, which it's going to be over this next issue. So I hope it continues to be great past that. But
if you were to rate the Daredevil series run right now on a beer scale, what would you give it?
Oh, okay. So I will, if we don't count the last issue, it would have been a probably 6 out of 6.
Okay.
Nice.
If we include the last issue, let me rate the last issue on its own, because it's totally different. That one gets 2 out of 6.
Okay.
And one of them is because that whole conversation, was like, okay, call out the stupid mask thing. And then 2, Mark Cicchetto's art is fantastic. Like it's literally half the reason why that book's so good, and I'll keep getting it. So
Yeah.
We did have a little cameo here. Alex is weighing in here saying, "Chip." There you go.
I gotta say, Marvel editors, what are they thinking? Chip's in a run that's 6 out of 6, and they make it tie into a stupid thing that's, some of these things, Marvel, I feel like, is always the person that's doing, is always the publisher that's doing this the worst, stepping on their own toes, shooting themselves in the foot, figuring out ways to get people to jump off of their books. And, I love Chip. I'll read anything he writes, but, I don't read Marvel and right now just because nothing's really grabbing me since X-Men. So
that's the thing, Tom, is that, like, if the 24 issues preceding it weren't so amazing, me, I would have dropped that thing in a second. So for me to suffer through 2 issues and the next issue, like, I didn't know 26 was going to be 27 was going to 27, 26, whatever it is. I didn't know the last issue was going to be that bad. And so, like, normally for me, I would skip this issue and just continue on with the next one, because that's the way I roll. But that series has been so good, I just feel like I probably should get it.
Yeah.
Like, so, you're right, though. It has literally nothing to do with Venom or anything. And they're just like, hey, you know what? Because the symbiote got into the jail. That's what happened.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, and I've been really curious about this particular series. First of all, Elektra's costume is looking sharp. She's looking fierce. She's taking on the world. So how is she doing, like, stepping into the mantle as a reader of the series?
She's been fine so far. In this issue, she kind of is. She's like kind of thinking, being like, what would Matt do? She's trying to, like, keep up his legacy, because they're on good terms right now. And it's not really like a lot of them believe that Matt should be in there, but he believes, he's like, hey, no, I got to do this. Like, it's the right thing to do. So he's probably going to get out. Who knows?
Yeah.
He's going to probably get out using that symbiote. The symbiote's going to make him break out. And he's like, oh, well, I'm out already. Let's just keep out here. And so I don't think it's going to be that long-lived of her being Daredevil, but it's fine right now. Actually, what you said, though, the costume and everything, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, Mark Cicchetto's art is, like, a reason to keep getting that book. And at least the Elektra stuff is not really heavily. Oh, never mind. Oh, at the end, she met up some Venom people, and she started fighting them. Never mind. I was gonna say, but that's not. At least that part's not tied in. Oh, they figured out a way. So
that's awesome. Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're reading that, man. That makes me happy. It's good.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that Marvel's, is so smart. All right, next books. I'm pulling in the DC people. 2 books. These are my 2 DC books. Sweet Tooth, which sucks that it's a DC book. You get DC ads. I fucking hate it every single time I open this book and get an ad. It's like, what are we doing? This was a Vertigo series. I shouldn't have ads for forged in whatever shit in the middle of this very, very well done, serious book that has nothing to do with superheroes or the DC universe in any way. Jeff Lemire on his best, drawing and writing and drawing. So it's really fun to be back in this world, and it kind of started slow. Now you're like, this thing's moving, and it's going to be like some limited series, and it's going to tease us. I definitely want more. I think it's really, really good. And then so that brings into my next DC book, which is Rorschach. I don't read post-Watchmen things. This is my first post-Watchmen ever of reading anything, even not watching the HBO show. Maybe I feel like I maybe need to watch that HBO show now that I'm liking this. Maybe my Alan Moore, bias needs to just be given up on, because I fucking love this. It's definitely, I think, Marvin, you've even might have said it's going to read better in trade or altogether, and I think you're probably right. But it is the exact type of storytelling that I want our creators to bring it to this type of level. You guys, I love Tom King for sure, but I talk a lot about, and I try to follow those young creators that are trying to bring storytelling to the next level, or doing it in different ways, or trying to bring it to a higher intellectual level. I think Tom King does that. And that's, another person that does that is that tries to shoot that goal all the time and misses sometimes, is Alice Cott. But I love these kind of smart, trying to be intellectual, trying to take their stories to have deeper meanings. And I think this is excelling. Can't wait to crack into this book.
That was one of mine tonight too. So definitely, I'll just throw in a couple words so we can get my take on it. But I feel like that is the best post-Watchmen thing that anybody has done. I do like the HBO series, actually. So I would say the HBO series, I think, was the first time, and I'm not sure when Tom actually wrote this, but I know he wrote it. He said he wrote it all 12 issues at once. So that's why I feel like it's going to be better in trade, because he wrote it as he said he wrote it as basically a book, and then he kind of segmented it up. And so it's already written. But both things, the show and this book, do a great job of setting a story in that world and mixing in the elements of it, but not trying to just copy what Alan Moore did. If you've read any of those before Watchmen things, or even Doomsday Clock, they feel really like they're trying to just mimic Alan Moore, even especially the 9-panel grids and everything that's a Watchmen kind of staple. Yeah. But this does not feel like that at all. There are some 9-panel grids, but not that many. And there are some, like Jorge Fornes, who does the art on that book, is just fantastic. The mood of that book is so fantastic. It's such a slow burn, but not in the sense that you wouldn't get anything out of the issue, even though it's going to recreate and trade. Every issue has at least 2 or 3 moments that, for me, I was like, that's fantastic. So,
looking through this, I think you're right. It doesn't have a 9-panel grid. Even when it gets close to having a 9-panel grid, look, it goes off. If you look at those seams right there where Dave Gibbons in that original one, it was true 9-panel. So even if he was going to have a middle one, this line would have matched down here, which these don't. So I agree. I think it is a different vibe, but I think it's a vibe because, Jorge Fornes and Tom King are so specifically, they have an idea of exactly what they're going for. Man, I'm enjoying this ride so much.
It's almost more like a True Detective kind of eerie mystery than it is Watchmen. Yes, it's called Rorschach, so obviously there's a Rorschach in it. But if you've read the comic, you know that it's very loosely tying back to that book. and it's more just like, hey, what happens in this world after all this shit happened? Well, this is what happens. It's not going to be directly related to those characters at all, but how are the people in this world influenced by what happened? So that's what that book's really about. So.
Totally. It's not even about Rorschach. I mean, the guy Rorschach, it's not about that guy. I mean, it's tying back to that, but it's talking about all the new stuff. And it's almost like, yeah, they were like, hey, everybody loves Rorschach. Tom King, can you do us a Rorschach book? And he's like, well, I already wrote this whole mystery. Let me shoehorn Rorschach into it. And hey, thank you, because it's working out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
It's almost like, Rorschach then Watchmen leaves that diary behind. It's almost like, who got influenced by that diary and started like living off of what that said, and basically how does try not to spoil it too much, but how does like a group take those teachings that he puts in there and like first off misinterpret them as teachings, and then second off like not knowing that this guy is cuckoo, and they'd be like, oh, he's telling the truth, he's the only person telling the truth. And so it's how does America exist with that kind of person as a lot of people's like savior and God that they look up to. So that's what it's fantastic about that book. So
hell yeah.
Heck yeah. Got some comments rolling in here from Mr. Matt. Definitely watch the HBO series.
You got it, Matt.
Apprehensions, but it's brilliant. And then recommendation of the Minutemen mini-series with Darwin Cook is worthwhile.
So that is good. But I will say that it doesn't break the mold of not being tied to Watchmen, because obviously it's about the Minutemen and what happens before Watchmen. It is good, but also it's like it does feel a little. It feels like when you see something in anything, any kind of entertainment, and you're like something's cool because it's a mystery, and then they tell you about it, and you're like, hey, what? Like it's good, but maybe I didn't need it. So that's what that series feels like. Darwin Cook's always great, though. So, I mean...
Yeah, I was going to say, but it's Darwin Cook, so who cares? It's like we're not going to ever get any more of his work. Maybe I will go and look at that just because Darwin Cook is so beautiful.
That's the thing.
Elegant style.
Just think about it as an early superhero group, and then don't you think about it as Watchmen, then it's good.
Yeah.
We got one more here from Mark. Rorschach is telling the truth.
Yes, bro. Oh, yeah, man. He's taking those teachings as well over here. All right, John, what else are you reading, dog?
All right, 3 books in a row here. X-Men Train Choo Choo Choo. We got Excalibur issue 18, X-Force issue 17, and Sword issue 3. So all aboard the Krakoa train. Loving it. Haven't read them yet, so I don't have too much to say, but I will say my X Factor and Hellions from last week were a big hell yeah. I love that I'm enjoying these off titles. I will say out of all of them, the X-Men book has been fun, but it's also been one of the slower ones, ironically. So like one of the title flagships in a way, like the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, that was awesome. But some of the issues surrounding that before that, it was okay. But some of these off ones are so wonderful and robust, and they complement each other. So whenever in X Factor, Dawkins who was it? One of the characters said, I need to go babysit Jubilee's kid or something. I'm like, oh, I know what's going on in Excalibur because I read it, So I'm like, getting my soap opera fix here with superpowers.
Hell yeah, man.
So definitely loving it. Huge cash cow for Marvel. I'm totally sure of that.
Yes.
But it is so refreshing to have just it's an overall story, an overall scene, but it's not like one event anymore. Like Ten of Swords is done. So these are all just little things that are going on that complement each other. And I love that as a continuity junkie that I am.
And isn't it good that if it is going to, be a cash cow, at least it's good. At least it's written well and you're enjoying the ride. So it's like, yeah, whatever, Marvel. Every once in a while, Marvel, you hit it on the head. So good job on Devil. Good job on X-Men.
We are getting some comments here. Watchmen was the talk of the town. Entirety of Before Watchmen is absolutely unnecessary, but
agree, James.
Some of its best talents working on those books. Okay.
Oh, I know. Didn't they? Can you believe they wasted that art in those writers for those books? But anyway, that's in the past.
Mark, Squid Attack was a lie.
Hell yeah, dude. It was, man. It was a lie. But it still got everybody to come together to stop the nuclear war. Oh, that's a funny comment. Good job.
And then James, right? Sword is climbing fast to the post of my favorite X book. L. Ewing is brilliant. Yes, I agree. With Sword, I didn't really know what to expect with it, and I'm just reading it like this surprisingly works, and it's been really fun to get to know. Not to mention the borderline sword cameos in WandaVision, kind of geeking out a little bit. But it's just so fun to see another X offering, and this one happens to just be in freaking outer space, which is so random and delightful.
I will say, speaking of what you just said, like sword showing up in WandaVision, Marvel is definitely on point with their synergy of their comics, shows, and movies happening at the same time. Because you mentioned earlier that Taskmasters and Thunderbolts and that Black Widow movie was supposed to have come out by now, so that's why he's in there. And they had a Black Widow miniseries when that movie was supposed to come out. And right now they have a Shang-Chi miniseries that movie was supposed to come out this month. They really have been like trying to make it so that people watch those things. They'd be like, hey, let me go read a book. Oh, there's a sword book. Let me read about sword. I know about sword now. So I do appreciate that they're trying to get people in there, but also for somebody who reads those books, sometimes it seems a little fake. You'd be like, okay, they'd be like, oh, who's in this book? I'd be like, oh, I bet it's going to be one of these people because they have a movie coming out. So, but as long as they have good people on it, it's usually okay.
You know, Marvin, you say this all the time on Wednesday Comics as well. You're always like, oh, well, you know, Marvel, it looks like they're bringing in Shang-Chi, so it goes in with the movie, yada, yada, yada. I mean, and you may be right, but I think we know from, if we look at comic book sales, that having a movie tied to a comic book has no bearing on if it's going to be successful or not. They have been 0% successful in getting people that watch their movies and TV shows to buy their comic books, because it doesn't fucking happen ever, no matter what.
That's what's funny to me, and they keep doing it. That's why I brought it. That's why on the show I make fun of it so much. It's like you keep trying. Nobody's watching Shang-Chi and being like, oh, let me go do this. I mean, that's certainly the intent of them putting him in that book or having his own book at that time, because for the same reason Pastrello over here won't get into a book that's like, you know, Sword issue 50. It's because they want to start at the same time the movie comes out, so somebody sees a Sword issue 1 or a Shang-Chi issue 1 or a Black Widow 1, and there literally have been books canceled and then 3 months later rebooted when the movie's going to happen to be like, hey, it's number 1. It'd be like, oh, they could have picked up that other thing, but it would have been issue 32, so they were like, oh, nobody's going to buy that. But you're right, though. Nobody buys it anyways. So I don't know what you're trying to do. Just ruin your books.
It's never worked. It's always short-sighted. It's always like it lasts for 1 or 2 issues that those higher sales will work for, and it never fizzles out, where if they just kept telling the story that they wanted to tell, they would have better stories to move into their cinematic world. And, you know, maybe we could start having some differentiations in the Marvel content, since it all looks the same, feels the same, sounds the same, and it's fucking indistinguishable from each other. I will say those X books had definitely gotten better ever since Hickman kind of rebooted that whole line, because they have been different than Marvel. Like, if you read Marvel comics now, it's and I'm not trying to hit on Marvel, but right now I love to do it. It's one of my favorite things to do, even though
I barely get any Marvel books right now, but X-Men is one of the ones I do get because it feels so different and does feel like older Marvel, like it's in its own thing. It knows that its comics can do whatever the hell it wants to do. The rest of them feel almost like they've been neutered to a point where they're like, hey, don't go too far, because we have these characters in movies and we don't want people thinking they're like this. And then once that character becomes popular, then it kind of gets melded into being like, make him more like the movie version. So I will say that with Tony Stark. Like, if you read Tony Stark before Iron Man came out, is a way different character than he is now. And they tried to make him just Robert Downey Jr. And some writers, horrible at trying to do it. They're not funny at all. And it's like, if you would have wrote Iron Man back when before these movies came out, you probably would have done a better job, because, you know, you're not a comedy writer. You're more different type of writer. But that's what I mean. It's like, I like, at least DC I appreciate. And I don't know, is it my time to bring up a book?
Yes, we actually catching up on comics super quick.
Go ahead. Yeah.
James, in response to Tom, I don't think they wasted the talent. I think they absolutely knew the only way they were going to sell those was if the very best talent was working on them.
I love it, James. I love it.
Go, James. That's right. Matt writes to James, Ewing works so hard to make the most of his projects. Agreed. Oh, this is. Oh no. No.
I think you're good. Definitely, we're getting trolled with this comment, but I do appreciate bringing up autoerotic asphyxiation on our podcast and putting that on our show, and then throwing that up for the whole board, John, is so everybody can see that. It makes me so happy, because like Shang-Chi, if you remember the Legend of Kung Fu actor, David Carradine sadly passed away just like that goldfish did. So you know what? It comes full circle. We can figure out how to bring it into comic books. But hell yeah, man. All right.
I think a goldfish, though, would clog up its gills to do that, though. Not like how David Carradine did. So,
right. I'm changing subjects. We're talking about the next books. All right, my next books are Heavy and Knock 'em Dead. So Heavy from Vault, it's about this angel who's like in purgatory and he has to do assassinations to get to heaven. Fucking weird. And this one's Knock 'em Dead. It's about a dead stand-up comedian. I'm loving both of them. They're both indie titles, Vault and Aftershock. They do really, really fun things. Excited to get see where we're at with these. Actually, this is issue 3. I haven't read issue 2. Sorry, Elliot. I will read this. But this is Elliot Ray Hall. He comes and supports SuperCon. A writer from Minneapolis, did some cool stuff with Valiant and Paybacks and some of our other favorite ones. So, you know, my favorite one is that Hot. What's it called? Hot something or another. But definitely check out all of his books. Excited to read these. Marvin, what else you got?
Future State, Dark Detective. That's the thing I was going to say. At least DC, I feel like, are always trying to do something different with death metal, and then with this, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. And with their Black Label line, I feel like they try to do different things. So I do appreciate that they try to keep it separate.
Yeah.
But Dark Detective, Tom, are you getting Dark Detective?
No.
You know what? Do yourself a favor. First off, no, I mean, you're going to get mad about 2 things about those books. But one thing you'll love is the actual main story. You have Mariko Tamiki, who is has done a little bit of comics, mostly is a prose writer. And she is writing Detective right now, or Dark Detective, it's called. You have Dan Moore on art, which is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're probably getting Dan Moore on art.
Yeah, it is fantastic. It's one of my favorite things I've read in the last, we'll say, even like 5 years. And 2 things, though, that you wouldn't like about it. One, it's $8 an issue. But that's because they put backups in it. 2 backups, and the backups are always not good.
Oh, yeah, I remember you, Marvin, or you, Garrett, and Alex were all shitting on the backs of these books now. I remember you talking about this.
Like, it literally makes no sense because the tone of the main story is not like the backups. And it literally, if you read them all back to back, it will ruin, you know, the whole flow of that book. So I've stopped reading them. But I do feel like that main book, and I'm not saying this, DC, if you're listening, don't try to do some other books. Don't make them $8. I do feel like that main story in that main book is worth $8.
Nice. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Fantastic.
Hell yeah.
Gosh.
Right, what else you got?
I got a lot of randos here, so I'll just pick on these 2 Marvel offerings, which are completely random and ridiculous. First of all, D. Vader, issue number 10, rocking with it still, barely. We're hanging on by a thread. It's actually starting to turn around for me, which is good because it was getting a little risky for a while. And then the best Marvel team ever. Power Pack Outlawed issue number 3, rocking with the classic team. I love this group so much because this was the team that had the issues of their old comics in the dentist office way back in the day that you would read, and they're all like torn up, you know, but you're like, oh, this is so cool. So it's been a lot of fun just revisiting that team and seeing them in the current Marvel you know?
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, my next 2, I got Black Hammer. Patton Oswalt wrote this, so it's like a Black Hammer spinoff. It's going to be, this is Black Hammer Visions. I think it's going to tell the world of Gale when she first gets in there is what if I remember reading a little bit about it. But I'm excited. I mean, I love Black Hammer. I'm super late to the party. I just got into him in 2020 through Hoopla. I felt like such an idiot because I had to burn through everything. It's one of the best. I mean, it's like the best thing Dark Horse does that isn't written by Matt Kent. So I'm absolutely super stoked to get into this. And then Patton Oswalt, you know, it's not Jeff Lemire, but hey, I'm a fan of Patton Oswalt. He's funny. He has a good Twitter. He's great comedian. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's going on.
That was my last book too.
Oh, nice.
Every issue is going to have a new writer artist, and they're like all-star teams. and it is telling like stories just from that world. And yeah, that's a prequel to the main book. So I'm excited to see Patton Oswalt. He's been obviously always been somebody who is in the comic kind of world, but he's been doing a lot of more consistent work. He did a MODOK series for Marvel recently, and he's writing on the MODOK show that's coming to Hulu. And now he's doing this. So I'm excited. Like Jeff Johns is a writer coming on. We have,
nice. That's cool. Jeff Johns writing for Dark Horse. That's cool.
There's like all these writers, and every single one is. We have Chip, who I just talked about. He's doing an issue. So and like Kelly Thompson, stuff like that. So I feel like that miniseries is gonna be fantastic. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Patton, he's written comics forever. I think he wrote comics 10 years ago. Brian Posehn, and one other comedian had this show on Comedy Central where they like went from city to city doing comedy, and they would, in every episode, they would stop at a comic book shop in that city they were in, and they would go and get their comics. And I fucking loved it so much. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe Brian Posehn and Patton Oswalt read the same comics as me. And then there was this one where they went to a store, and then Brian Posehn gets his whole stack of comics for the new ones that he's getting that Wednesday, but they don't have any boards and bags. And then he just, for the next week, complains about how all the comics he bought were completely useless and worthless now because he wasn't able to bag and board them. And I always thought that was so funny. But yeah, so I'm super stoked to have Patton Oswalt writing on a regular basis. He's, like you said, he's always been a part of comics in a lighter way, with, who knows what's happening with Hollywood. Guess what? Comics are coming out, man. Let's just have some of these good writers move and comedians start doing books for Dark Horse. Sure. I'm all for it.
Let's do it. We're getting some awesome notes here. Mr. Alex writes, hell yeah, Paybacks is the best night.
Yeah.
Followed by your most recent one there, Tom. What the hell, Tom, from Alex.
That's not reading Paybacks, I'm sure, and I'm sorry, Alex. I should have.
Tears streamed down my face hearing about Black Hammer tardiness.
I know, it's my bad, dog. It's my bad. I can't believe it.
And then also, James and Matt were kind of going back and forth here, talking more about Ewing. And Immortal Hulk was brought up. And that's really interesting. I actually just read a pretty good chunk of it. I'm not collecting it, like, formally, but I did pick up issues 37 through 43. And I just read it this week.
Nice.
Because Alpha Flizzy is in it, man. We got Puck, Shaman, and then Doc Samson took over Sasquatch's body, so it's like a green Sasquatch. I'm like, so I was just like, I gotta read this. So the main story, it's interesting, but man, those Alpha Flight cameos, I'm like, yeah. So that's why I'm in there. So I don't know how long I'll ride with it, but it's been a lot of fun too. So I just had to recognize that nod to it, to the series.
Oh yeah, John's favorite friends from the north.
Heck yeah. I got three left.
Yeah, I got one left, so you knock some out.
All right. I got two here. On the indie front, I Walk with Monsters, issue number 3. Really excited to read this. Our friends at Vault Comics. Fantastic. So stoked. Issues 1 and 2 were brilliant. So looking forward to digging in. And of course, you guys, I'm surprised Tom had time to make the show here. But, when we're posing for comic book covers, like the Green Ranger does, Mighty Morphin, issue number 4, which is so dumb because I hate that we have 2 Power Rangers series that literally complement each other. And there's no reason. So it's literally Mighty Morphin and then Power Rangers. And then it's just every other. And it's the worst nightmare ever for me. So my long box, which also is a Power Rangers, or long box, short box, Power Rangers short box official. But now it just looks like a complete clusterfuck. And I hate it. I hate it so much.
Oh, that's good, man.
Yeah. So
I love that you hate it. This is exactly what Marvin was talking about earlier. You hate it, yet you will not buy a Power Rangers comic book. It's impossible for you not to buy if it says Power Rangers. So
I talk a big game.
Exactly, man. That's good.
Especially you had an out because they kind of ended and started again. You could have jumped out.
It's complicated.
All right. My last book, Bliss. This was like some real trippy stuff where this guy who was trying to protect his family started taking this drug that gets all blissfully. So then he would assassinate people to make money for his family, take this drug, and he'd forget about it. Then that all starts coming back, and it's like his daughter's, trying to stick up for him. It's all fucked up, but it's pretty good. I mean, issue 5, if it ends, I think it should end pretty soon, and it would be like a good chapter. I don't think it's good enough to keep going on. But so once this kind of arc ends, and I see what happens to the killer's daughter, I'm out. But so far, I'm still checking it out.
I think it is a mini, by the way.
Heck
And
yeah.
it should be, and it's a perfect mini. It's a really interesting mini. So
That's the book I'll be picking up too, but I'm a little behind, so that's why I didn't want to talk about it. But
nice.
It's been good so far. The art's fantastic. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I can give you some examples of this art. It's really, really stylized. As you can see, all of the characters look like really cool. That's another part of it. Like they have cool style and cool fashion, and I love it. It's definitely really, really good. And even look how pretty these layouts are. So,
And
Definitely.
Alex was saying it is 8 issues.
Oh, nice. Thanks, Alex. So yeah, I still got 3 left. So that's fine. Perfect. That's a perfect amount for that book. So
Heck yeah. Well, I got one more, Marvin. Are you?
I'm done.
You're done?
That's
All
what
right.
I had.
Well, I got the mighty 3rd printing of Star Wars: The High Republic, and I'm really excited to check this one out. So, I believe I was watching the Comic Book Bears Star Wars special, and this book came up, and I was like, I've seen this, and I'm just really intrigued. So I'm not sure if these are Trandoshans or another like similar race, but just really curious about additional Jedi characters and seeing what that looks like. I actually got issue 2 when it came out as the first print, but the first issue completely sold out, which means it must have done something right. So I'm looking forward to checking it out. It's really funny too. Rainbow said that they ordered the second issue, the second printing of it, and it actually never came. So they're like, yeah, we're not really sure what's up with that, but the 3rd printing is coming in a couple of days. I'm like, okay. So I have not read issue 2 yet either, so I'm really looking forward to getting both of these read.
I have those 2, but I haven't read them yet. The concept of it sounds intriguing, so that's why I thought I would try it out. Plus, it's the thing with comic books is that you kind of get into this groove of like following certain writers and artists or characters in John's case, and so like John probably experiences this more. You like read or see somebody's art that is different, and so like, I'm trying to. 2021 is, I think 2020 was me just getting stuff I knew that I would like, and 2021 is kind of like dipping toes into new people. So that's why I got those, because like I don't know that artist or that writer, and I was like, let me try it out. I think I'm going to try out some new people this year. So
we're going to expand outside the box, Marvin. That boy. All right, well, that's it. Let's shout out some of our favorite guests, and I'm going to start with the man behind me. This is Wilbur. He's from Gigglebees, a star of Sioux Falls. But this is drawn by our boy Mikey Martinez. And recently, he's been doing a push to try to grow his Instagram. He just hit 500. So if you are watching this and you are on Instagram, check out Mikey B. Martinez. He is the man. He's Sioux Falls' own. He's one of our, a friend of the show and one of my favorite artists of all time. So definitely follow him. Big shout out to Mikey.
Got another local person hopping on in here, you guys. Pocahon is in the building. Hey, Pocahon, thank you for stopping by. If you guys are not following Pocahon on YouTube, he has got you covered from Godzilla collectibles to all things Pokemon and everything in between. He knows what he's talking about. He's very passionate about what he does, and his videos are superb. And he is another amazing part of our 605 community. So thank you, sir, for stopping by. And good to see you.
Yeah, definitely. Nice work, Joe. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, and of course, I think we know these guys. Wednesday Comics podcast. We could probably put a plug in too. But yeah, Marvin, where can they find you at?
WednesdayComics.com is the website. We'll get you the podcast. You can drop a message from that page also, or you can call 605-215-1849. Call and leave a voicemail. Also on that same page, you can click the website button to get to that merch page to get that shirt if you like to. Tonight, this is being recorded through the 12th. They are on sale, $13 for that shirt. And so if you want to pick that up, No code needed. Just go there and pick it up. It's I think that's 20% off. Yeah, on Twitter, they look at Wednesday Comics. The rest of us have our handles. If you go to WednesdayComics.com and download an episode, it has all the information in each notes about how to contact us. Once again, like I said, I know this is on Facebook too. We have a Facebook page that Garrett is in charge of, and I doubt that thing's been updated in 2 years. So there he is.
Yeah,
I don't think
that ain't being updated.
That wasn't the maybe where that was for, but it fit perfectly. So we're gonna miss Garrett here. Yeah.
He's chiming in from Facebook, so he could be looking at it right now, seeing was the last time he updated it, but only because I don't have Facebook anymore, and so he's my. And I would give that job to Alex, but Alex can't even run a phone, so I doubt he'll know how to run a website. So,
jeez,
he knows. The dude had a flip phone until like 4 years ago. So,
okay.
Alex is my favorite guy in Wednesday Comics by far. Best Wednesday comic is Alex.
Alex is between me and Garrett's age, but in his heart, he's definitely 30 years older than both of us. So.
He's just so particular. It's so fun to listen to him. He's such an individual person. I love Alex. Alex, if you're listening, Garrett, don't get me wrong. You're the man too. I saw you at the shop today. But Alex is the man. Marvin, you can't be our favorite because you're like the host and you do all the talking. So it's impossible for you to be anybody's favorite. You just have the train rolling, and you just and then Garrett and Alex get the accolades.
No, that's the thing. The glue keeps it together. Nobody ever thinks about that. They always look at the outside. So
it's hard being the head honchos. Tom and I don't get any of the credit. Everybody loves Ken and Sarge and even Skylar, even though he hasn't been on the show for like 5 years. Like, where's Skylar at? When's he gonna be in the next show? Yeah. So it's Tom and I are real behind the scenes with this whole thing.
It's also hard not to make Sarge the star when he's on everything on the internet.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
The Nick Fury of the 605U. That's right. Goodness. Well, heavens, man. Great episode tonight. Lots of books that we talked about. It's been a really cool couple of weeks in comic books, I think. And I love the variety on the shelves. I will say that. Like, we're all talking kind of different things here. So that's pretty sick. So.
Hell yeah, man. Exactly, dude. Exactly.
Yeah.
Great show.
And, of course, yes.
The bell.
All right, shut it down, John.
All right. Well, on that positive note, Alex heard it. You heard it first. I am fan-fucking-tastic. That is right. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you to everyone. James and let's see, Pocahontas stopped by. We got Matt also hanging out with us. Thank you guys so much for chiming in tonight. It was an awesome conversation. Great way to spend a Wednesday evening. I hope everyone is having an amazing comic book week. You guys know the drill. As always, we're a comic book look sponsored by Rainbow Comics, awesomest partnership in the galaxy. If you're in Sioux Falls area, come say howdy at 42nd in Minnesota. And then if you're in Lincoln, Nebraska, no problem. We got you covered with our own location there too. Stop by and say hi. Tom, John, Marvin from Wednesday Comics. We're going to go ahead and sign off, but thank you guys as always for being amazing, and keep it comics for sure, man. Boom. And then I click stop.